Bullfighters and mosquitoes of the RAF Coastal Command crossed the channel to bomb and strafe Nazi merchant convoys carrying supplies for isolated German garrisons still holding out along the western coast of Europe. Some ships are attacked en route, others trapped inside the ports of beleaguered cities. Steadily mounting risks faced Nazi merchantmen as land-sea contact is cut off by Allied bombings of enemy communications on the continent. Homeward-bound bullfighters attack a gas tank. Air Corps films of American 8th Air Force fighter bombers strafing ground targets. Assault on the Calais garrison. RAF Lancasters, Halifaxes, and other heavies dropping thousands of tons of bombs score direct hits on Nazi strongpoints along the French coast port. Comes down in flames. This bombardment is preliminary to the truce arranged for the evacuation of civilians. Calais was captured on 1st October. A German pillbox and cross-channel gun position at La Trésorerie near the surrendered port of Boulogne. The 305mm gun is part of the vast installations captured by the Canadians. For the city of Dover, silencing of these long-range weapons ends 4 years of German shelling. It is estimated that the total number of shells dropped on Dover was 2,226. Activities of ordnance combat vehicle and artillery pools behind 1st and 3rd Army lines. At a collection depot and repair yard servicing the 1st Army, mechanics of an ordnance battalion reassemble a 155mm howitzer. Damaged vehicles of the 3rd Army are repaired by members of a heavy maintenance company. When tanks leave here, they are ready for combat down to ammo and rations. Repairing the transmission and final drive of a Sherman tank. An air-driven wrench is used to tighten transmission bolts on an M8 armored car. A replacement is necessary for a gun barrel pierced by a 40mm projectile. Cutting 3/4-inch armor plate. Patches are needed for tank hulls punctured by APs. Welding a patch on a Sherman hull. Tank specialists reinstall a thrown track. A new radial engine is uncrated and installed in an armored vehicle. Back into action again with armored units moving into Germany. 7th Army Infantry spearheads the drive above Belfort and the Gap to southwestern Germany. On 23rd September, they advance near the important highway junction of Remiremont, 14 miles south of Épinal. From Remiremont, the attack spreads out along highways leading to the Vosges passes. Moving up to cross the Moselle River, engineer units working in the area help to assure safe and rapid passage for the troops. Ammo is held high and dry as the men wade in. Guide ropes have been rigged up to help the infantrymen across. Assault boats are put into service as the order comes to rush the whole battalion across as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, trucks ford the river, coming back empty to pick up another load of troops. The advance continues. It's reported that snow faces units fighting their way toward the western slopes of the Vosges. To the north, on the 3rd Army front, a squadron of C-47s brings in winter clothing for American troops. The planes arrive at a point southwest of Nancy, some 30 miles behind the battlefront lines. The supply operation is under the supervision of the Chief Quartermaster for the European Theater of Operations. Heavy overcoats, wool socks, long underwear, knitted wool caps, mackinaws are among the variety of winter necessities flown into the fighting areas. Quartermaster reports indicate that by mid-October, the American armies in Europe were 98% winterized. Firebombs are introduced during the fighting for Metz in the 3rd Army sector. The incendiaries are dropped by P-47s, which on 28th September dive-bomb Fort Jeanne d'Arc, setting huge fires. The many German forts defending Metz have been stubborn targets for Allied artillery. Therefore, the firebombs serve as valuable aid for the ground troops. On the 1st Army front, German civilians come out of the cellars of a factory in Stolberg, about 6 miles east of Aachen. They'd been in hiding during the week-long house-to-house fighting for the city. Half of Stolberg's 30,000 population had fled before our troops entered on 22nd September. AMG officials have been rounding up Nazi soldiers who disguised themselves in civilian clothes and joined the refugee columns. Near the Siegfried Line, an example of Nazi deception. A house frame constructed over a pillbox. Behind the camouflage are the steel and concrete of a strong west wall fortification. The house was designed so as to give maximum concealment to the main sections of the pillbox. This type of camouflage was also employed by the Nazis along the Atlantic Wall. Four and a half miles south of Aachen on 28th September, the Siegfried Line is photographed from the air. Only a few of the pillboxes are seen, as most of them have been sealed and covered to prevent their use by the Nazis in the event of recapture. However, the lanes of dragon's teeth, which were still intact, are shown. They vary from 2 feet in height to 5 feet and are approximately 3 feet square at the base. Construction is of cement over a reinforcement and foundation of steel. The Allied crew disputes previous Nazi claims that the Siegfried Line constitutes an impregnable barrier against invasion of Germany from the west. German civilians help repair roadways damaged during the breaching of the line. Even as this work goes on, 1st Army units continue the advance that preceded the siege of Aachen. An air train wings toward the Eindhoven-Nijmegen area of Holland with supplies and reinforcements following initial landings of the 1st Allied Airborne Army. dropping supplies just south of Nijmegen. Here, airborne infantrymen are engaged in securing important bridges and flanking the northern anchor of the Siegfried Line. During the entire Netherlands airborne operation, American planes and gliders alone carried nearly 6 million pounds of supplies and equipment. The following scenes were made with a camera strapped to the chest of a parachutist. A heavy concentration of anti-aircraft fire brings further losses in Allied planes, indicating a vigorous attempt on the part of the enemy to stem an Allied drive north from Nijmegen. Glider planes bring in reinforcements to help broaden the Eindhoven-Nijmegen corridor and attempt to establish contact with encircled elements of the British 1st Airborne Division on the north bank of the Lech River. Operating with British forces during the whole period of the airborne invasion were nearly 6,000 American planes and gliders. Of this number, less than 3% were lost, despite fierce enemy opposition. At Toulon, which fell on 26th August, an inspection is made of the harbor area. Extensive Allied bombings and Nazi demolitions leveled most of the big installations. This torpedo plant was in full production just prior to the entry of 7th Army troops. The lathes are still in place. On a mountain overlooking the harbor is Fort de C4, built by the French in 1877 and used by the Germans when they occupied southern France. An 88mm gun which guarded the fort has a blown-out breech. Fort de la Croix-Faron, built in 1873. French coastal guns are set up at strategic points near the fort. Guns and forts were rendered unusable by Allied bombings before D-Day. In 1936, the French installed 320mm dual naval guns to strengthen Toulon's defenses. A rangefinder and plotting installation. B-24s flying hundreds of miles to the north from bases on Wakety Island attacked the Palau archipelago. The frequent bombings helped to neutralize the enemy's offensive power prior to amphibious invasions. These islands constitute a strategic barrier to the Philippines. Mindanao is some 500 miles due east. The Japs had developed the Palaus as a principal advanced naval base and assembly point for fuel, ammunition, and supplies passing between Japan and the Southwest Pacific. Coordinated with the land-based heavy bomber sorties is carrier aircraft support from Task Force 58. Torpedo bombers and their fighter escorts leave flight decks to join in the attacks. The combined operations greatly reduced the importance of the Palaus as a Japanese fleet anchorage and air base. In conjunction with the aircraft, surface vessels of Admiral William F. Halsey's Third Fleet move in to attack gun emplacements, pillboxes, and other defenses on the beaches and inland. The assault is concentrated mainly on Peleliu and Angkor Islands. 5 successive days of bombing and shelling climax the pre-invasion foray. September, initial forces head for Peleliu for first landings in the Palau Group. The shelling of the island continues, supplemented by fire from landing craft. Marines of the 1st Division, commanded by Major General William S. Rupertus, drive in force toward the beaches. Reports from Peleliu credit the relatively light losses to the extremely effective call fire and close support fire from the warships offshore, and to the accuracy of bombings by the carrier-based aircraft. Peleliu was chosen for the first attack because it contains the best airfield of the archipelago. Within the island, the Jap garrison is holding out in pillboxes, caves, and trenches. The strongest point of resistance is along a low coral ridge, nicknamed Bloody Nose Ridge by the Marines. A command post and communication system are quickly set up. Meanwhile, Marines move on the airfield against stiffening resistance. Jap dead in the first 2 days of fighting total 1,458. Our lines advance to the northern and eastern limits of the airfield, which is captured by noon of the 16th. Wrecked bombers, fighters, and transports are found by the Marines. Construction equipment is brought up to the beaches and driven to the airfield. A power shovel speeds the job of whipping the airstrip into shape. Natural coral deposits provide surfacing material. The aerodrome has 2 runways, both approximately 4,000 feet long, with 460-foot turning circles at either end. From here, our fighter planes can strike against the entire Palau Group. First landings on the captured airfield. Army troops of the 81st Division, which successfully invaded nearby Angkor Island, helped end the fierce fighting for Peleliu.